Welcome back to Strange Darkness Radio. And on today's show, we have something very special in multiple layers. Joining us back for, a long time, it's been a long time since she's been on, to me anyways, is Miss Grey. Carolyn Grey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Yes. So
I'm
what have
so
you been
happy to
up
be
to?
back. Oh
Yes.
God.
What have you been up to?
Just busy working and working on my little side project podcast.
Well, it's a major podcast. It's up and coming, growing, and all that good stuff.
It's up and coming. Yeah.
Yes.
So I've been working on a femme fatality with Chelsea, as you know, and it's a true crime podcast. So if anyone's interested, you can check that out. We actually just did a really interesting story about the Annalisa. Oh God, I can't remember her last name, but it's the chick who got possessed in Germany, and that was in like the 60s, I think. And
Okay.
it was a really good story. It was well researched. I'm not doing it justice, but Chelsea did an amazing job, and so that's going to be coming out soon. So yeah, everyone should check that
Nice.
out if they want.
Nice. Well,
How are
definitely,
you?
I'm doing
Missed
amazing. Like,
you.
oh yeah, we definitely missed you. We always talk and everything. I'm always trying to pull you somewhere or in on something. And but yeah, no, the show's doing great. And people always ask, where's Carolyn and everything else, especially when you're posting on Facebook and all kind of stuff. I was like, oh, we haven't done the reunion, or at least the what are you up to, and talking about your new show. So but yeah, no, I thank you for doing this show. This show is very special and has a lot of serious things happening that we truly, in the paranormal and UFO realm, and all the people who seek, hidden questions, that we don't focus or pay attention to the people that work at the facilities that the government has. And that's what our focus is today. So we have a very special guest. Let's definitely get into it. And Benson will lead us in. Here we go.
Tonight, we bring you Dave Crete, once a security police sergeant at the top-secret Nevada test and training range, better known as Area 51. His duty exposed him not just to classified weaponry, but to a hidden enemy, radiation and toxic contamination that has wreaked havoc on his body. He now faces brain cysts, atrophy, tumors, and documented generational harm, while those responsible remain shielded by secrecy. Because his work was classified, VA records won't acknowledge his service, and the PACT Act doesn't cover his exposure. So Crete carried his pain to Congress, demanding the NTTR be deemed a toxic site, exposure presumed, and earned disability benefits extended to fighters like him. His testimony is a call for justice, pushing legislation like the PROTECT Act and Forgotten Veterans Act to recognize the hidden casualties of America's most secret base. What other secrets does Area 51 hold?
Dave, welcome to Strange Darkness Radio. Thank you for doing this show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's probably the coolest entry I've ever heard.
Thank you.
No, thank you for having me and allowing me to share the story of the group of folks that I worked with. This has really been the greatest media for us in order to share our message with people, because my first job is really to educate people, because people don't know about us. We joke we were all hidden in plain sight, and the government still tries to do a good job in making that continue.
Yeah.
But the truth is that's coming to an end, whether they like it or not. It's kind of one of those things, enough's enough. And I think the advent of things like Facebook and the internet and whatnot have caused them problems they weren't hoping for.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. So for those who may not know your story, can you please let them know your background and everything?
So I served in the Air Force from 1983 to 1989. In December of 1983, I signed into Nellis Air Force Base to a unit that's called 4461st Support Group Security Police. And the only thing that we knew when there was a group of us, there's about a half a dozen of us that came at the same time, all young airmen right out of training. The only thing that we knew that we were told is we were going to live in Vegas for 4 years. And anything beyond that, they couldn't tell us till we got our security clearances. That security clearance process, we've started in probably September. And about the 1st of February, they finally came through and we got to get told what we were going to do and where we were going and the whole deal. So about the 1st of February, I went to work for the first time. And I went up to an area that's called Nevada Test and Training Range. It's an area roughly the size, slightly larger than the state of Maryland. So it's a huge place. And
Wow.
and we hear people refer to Area 51 or all these various nicknames that are that people use when they're talking about where we worked, but it makes it sound like it's just a dot on the map, and it's not in fact a dot on the map. It's a huge area in the map, and that's part of the reason why the government likes it so much, because it's not like you can drive up to the street, there's a dead end, and walk a little ways down the road and there's something there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an enormous area. And I mean, it's so big that for me to go to work, it was a half-hour flight on a military chartered 727. So, I mean, it really wasn't around the corner. So we go to work, and I'm 18 years old, just turning 19 years old. It's probably the coolest job you could possibly have. You know, you're feeling a little bit like a James Bond kind of thing. You know, you can't tell anybody what you did, and we genuinely didn't. It was, you know, people joke about it. It's the worst kept secret in the history, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
It really isn't, because you couldn't find out what we did. I mean, people knew we existed, especially in Las Vegas, because of the test site, you know, where they used to blow up the nukes and all these other things. Everybody knew somebody that had a job that they couldn't tell you what they did.
Mhm.
So people thought that kind of ruined the secret. Well, the fact was they didn't tell you what they did. And that's not a bad thing. The issue that we ran into, I spent 4 years up there, and that was the typical assignment for people. Some stayed longer, some became government contractors, DoD contractors after they got out of service. And I know people that were up there 20, 30 years. But the issue that we ran into after we had the coolest job in the world and got to do things, see things that nobody had ever seen, nobody had ever done, was to fast forward, was in about end of 2014. One of my old buddies got a hold of me for the first time. You didn't really keep track of one another like we do today. You don't have that connection ability. There's no cell phones and emails and Facebooks and none of that. And complicated with the fact that a lot of the folks that got into that world of work didn't leave. And so you didn't know where they were or anything. So, but like I said, the end of 2014, a guy named Mark Erickson sent me a thing on Facebook and says, "Hey, is this Cujo?" Cujo is my nickname in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Still my nickname. My wife calls me that to this day. And he goes, "Is this you?" And I saw who it was. Obviously, he was at my wife and I's wedding. I knew who he was. I responded. We started chatting, and he tells me that that the unit has started to have reunions. They want to have another one. They just had the first. It was at our old chief's house in South Carolina, and they wanted to plan another one. I said, "Okay, great." So we did. We had planned another one. It ends up being at my house here in Las Vegas. And this is where this super cool job starts to take this strange twist. And never in my life, and most people I think will understand this, that while we're sitting there talking, one of the guys speaks up. Randy goes, "Does anybody here have any tumors?" Well, that's just not, you haven't seen somebody for 30 some years. You're sitting in the backyard drinking and, you know, and lying about how great life has been or whatever you did, whatever, right? For the last 30 years. You don't bring up, "So, hey, has anybody here got a tumor?"
Yeah.
And I spoke up and I said, "I do. I had a big one that was removed from my back. It was like the size of a grapefruit." And he says, well, because I got this strange lump in my back. And sure enough, it was roughly the exact same spot that mine was,
Yeah.
that I had removed. I'm like, okay, well, that's odd. Uh, at the time, there was 8 of us in my backyard. Well, 6 guys had tumors.
Mm.
Oh my
Well, that's
God.
kind of odd. A 7th guy speaks up and he goes, I don't have any, but my son was born with one. My son was born when we were upranged. Okay. Well, I have a son that was born with something called neurofibromatosis. For the old folks that are listening to your show, there was a movie that Cher had done called Mask. And
Yes.
he has a form of that issue, that disease. So quite strange. 6 out of 8 of us have tumors. The 7th one says my kid has a tumor. I said my kid has a tumor issue. And we kind of just went from there, and we're talking. We continue back to doing what we're doing, but we all found that kind of strange. Throughout that weekend, there was about 20 guys that showed up to my house, 20 men and women. I
Yeah.
say guys, 20 women, who showed up to my house, and we spent the weekend, and different things kind of came up because everybody started kind of asking the question. We stayed in contact. We continued to try to find people on Facebook, and grow our numbers. We weren't a huge unit, but we were trying to grow our numbers and find the folks we worked with. Well, then we started finding out a couple of the guys that died, which I'm 60 now. I figure this started up 10 years ago. I'm 50, not too uncommon in age. Most everybody, my supervisors were only a few years older than me. So we start finding out guys are dead. We start finding out and we start talking. It's like our wives all had miscarriages. Some of the guys were saying, my kid was born with this autoimmune disorder. My kid was born with this genetic defect or whatever. And one of the things that came back was that we started finding out is that everybody's like, well, my son had neurofibromatosis. We went to geneticists. There's no genetic history. Well, that's odd. The doc says, your kid's called a spontaneous mutation.
Yeah.
Something out of Star Wars, right? And
Mhm.
he says, for your son to get this without there being a genetic history, it's like 1 in 50,000. So it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Luck of the draw. That's what we think when we first hear about this when he's a little boy. This is, we started finding out what his medical issues were in about 1989, 1990. And we just, it's just one of those things. There's a million things that can go wrong, with a baby.
For sure.
So whatever, we just wrote it off to that. But then as I start talking to people over the next couple of years, I find other people saying, yeah, my kid has this thing. It's this really odd disease. It's called neurofibromatosis. And, it's a genetic thing. We have no genetic history. And I'm like, all right, so it's 1 in 50,000. And now I found 3-4 people that have kids, same thing, who worked in the same general area. They all worked on NTTR. And, so we continue to research. One of the things as I started to research this back in like 2015 was the fact that these tumors that we have, these lipomas, have a rate of occurrence. And one of the things I'm very specific about is, one, I try to remain extremely accurate on everything that I say. And I like to use the government's data to back up what I say. Kind of makes it irrefutable on their part. Well, the NIH, National Institute of Health, says that these tumors have a rate of occurrence of 1 per 1,000 to 2.3 per 1,000 people. We're sitting in the backyard. 75% of us had these tumors. That math, when I got out of the Air Force, I went to college and I got a couple degrees in business. And my emphasis, the things I liked, was stats and economics. Well, those courses tell me that if you have a 1/10 of a 1% chance of getting something, the likelihood a small group with 75% of them having it, it's not very likely.
Yeah.
So that's what we start finding out. We start finding the rate of occurrence, how often all of us have something, is super high. It got to the point that it seemed like everybody had something. And if they didn't have anything, they just didn't know yet.
Yeah.
And some people are okay. And then this was a few years ago. I'll jump forward a little bit, but I had a conversation with a physicist who studied these type of things. And I'll get into what those are, but the type of things that we were exposed to. And I said, here's a list of everything that I know of that's unclassified, of different toxins and the radiation. Take a look at this. And this is a question that I have. What's the likelihood somebody be exposed to this and end up coming down with some type of a condition that it would impact their health? About a week later, he comes back to me and he says, let me answer your question like this. He goes, first off, there's nowhere else in the world anybody could be exposed to this cocktail.
Yeah.
Number two,
Mhm.
for somebody to leave there and not have it impact their health is 1 in a million.
Mm.
But you don't get
Wow.
out of there without it causing some problems. Well, that was like the complete opposite answer of what I was looking for.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you just don't expect this guy to come back. And he's basically, there's no chance in hell you leave there without a problem. So, you know, I gathered all this stuff up, and what I found was this, is that there is like 6 different types of radioactive isotopes that are active out there on the range from all the testing, and, you know, uranium, depleted uranium, plutonium, I can't even say it right. It's like americium, beryllium, all this different stuff. And then at any military base you go to, there's things you're going to be exposed to: hydrazine, benzene, halon, different things like that, different chemicals that you use, the jet fuels, the jet exhaust.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff. Any base, you go to Nellis Air Force Base here in Vegas, you can go out there and find some toxic stuff.
Yeah.
So we had that up there, and then we had this other stuff. And then here's the piss me off. This is when you get into the government needs to do something about this. Again, if you're old enough, you remember this is when I was a little kid, but Ford built this car called a Pinto.
Mm-hmm.
And when Ford built it, they said, you know, if somebody rear ends is hard enough, this car is going to blow up. But there's not going to be enough people killed that it's going to take away the profitability of the car. So they said the juice was worth the squeeze. Well, 1975, I found a published report. The report was from 1975 that said this place is contaminated with plutonium. The best case scenario is nobody should ever come here. It's not a really habitable kind of place. And if they do, they need to only have limited exposure. They come in, they do what they got to do, they get out. And the military then decided to build a base there. The base I was at was built in 1979. This report's dated 4 years earlier. But in this report, and it's a government report, it's a government environmental assessment, and it says that the benefit of continuing to use this range outweighs the future environmental liabilities. So they did an analysis, the government did, and said the juice is worth the squeeze. It's worth sending people out there and using this place because the benefit to national security is greater than whatever the cost is going to be down the road.
Yeah. Which is
Can I
unfortunate.
ask why is it worth the squeeze? What is the benefit of having their, you know, using that location versus going somewhere else? Do you think it was almost like they were kind of doing an experiment with you guys, or is it just
No,
the
I don't think it
isolated?
was an experiment, and that's a pretty common question. And I really don't think it was that. I think I look at everything the government does, and it always seems to boil down to money.
Mm-hmm.
They have this area. They've already spent money out there. They've already jacked it up. And it's the most desolate place in the United States. It's the most least populated place that there is. And like I say,
Okay.
this is this huge area. And there's these locations out there that nobody can get to. You know, if you go back a couple of years, there was a thing called Storm Area 51.
Yeah.
Right. They went to hold a concert, and all these millennials and stuff, they were gonna race out there and go. They were just gonna overwhelm them. You know, and those of us that were cops that used to work out on the range was like, man, we would buy tickets for this. Lawn chair cooler beer, we're gonna watch because this shit's going down. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they're not getting there, right? I mean, you're not getting there. That's why
you have to walk in the desert for days to get there.
Well,
basically.
and not only that, long before you ever get there, the folks are going to know.
Yeah.
You know, they think that
and they're going to stop you
out there in that desert to figure out you're there. No, they know when a coyote's walking.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're looking at a place that people don't get to, that it's pretty inhospitable. I mean, it's
Mhm.
high desert. It gets super cold in the winter. It gets really hot in the summer. It's very, very arid. I mean, there's three things I joke about that are out there. There's people, there's horses, there's tumbleweeds. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And so it was convenient.
Mhm.
And that's basically what it boils down to. It was convenient. They knew that nobody, a civilian population, could never live out there. So we're just going to do what we do. And through all of this process, I've learned other things that the government's done in the past that you're like, they genuinely didn't give a crap.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
What they were going to learn was better.
So being that
Right.
you're in the military, correct? And I'm at Travis Air Force Base a lot, especially the hospital and what I do. And the doctors that you're utilizing, especially when you're in the military, they're military doctors, correct? You're using the Air Force Base.
Mhm.
Okay, so and they never said, "Hey, there's a problem here." Be it, yeah, we just saw Dave Crete. Let me talk to my supervisors. Let me talk to the base commander. Like, hey, you guys have something going on here because these elements and things that's happening to this particular individual, they're not normal and it's not natural. So you guys need to look into this. That never happened.
No, and there's actually a really good reason why. What what has been learned is, so what we were exposed to as far as radiation goes, it was long-term low dose ionizing radiation exposure. That's technically what it's called. The reality of that is that most of the issues, the average time for those issues to manifest after this type of exposure is 20 to 30 years.
Hmm.
Oh, wow.
So that's why, like, I had that tumor removed from my back sometime around 2005. I'm not thinking it's because of what I did in 1985.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm really not drawing a connection to that. And when you go see the surgeon says, some people just get these. Okay, so I just got it. That's fine. You know, you don't, it's like, why did somebody get, some cancer? Well, we know people get cancer.
Yeah.
So
So it didn't,
first off,
you really didn't connect the dots until you had gotten together with the other veterans and you guys started telling your stories and sharing
right.
notes and comparing notes,
And
basically.
that's exactly it. And we were small.
Mhm.
When I was uprange, my flight, like my shift, when I was a cop on duty, there was like 11, 12 other guys, men and women, that were on duty. It's not like if you went out to, again, to Nellis, if you went to Travis, there's tons of cops on that base.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And as soon as you cross in through the gate, you're going to see them. They're going to be all over the flight line. They're going to be everywhere. We were so desolate that we're a full size base, if you will. I mean, we have full size runway and everything, but we're so far out in the middle of anywhere, and we'd know if something was coming, that we just weren't a big unit. There wasn't a lot of people up there. Furthermore, you don't want to have a ton of people up there because your security risk of divulging what goes on out there, selling secrets to the Russians or whatever, goes way up.
Yeah.
So they
Mhm.
really limited access, and they limited the number of people, the government limited the number of people that were up there, which is fine. The other thing that we find out going through this is, yeah, there was the military, there was us that was up there. But the military did the military jobs, right? The military were the pilots, they were the mechanics, they were the cops, they were the firemen, they were the people who had to deal with whatever asset it was you were working on. So the buildings and the roads and the motor pool and the chow hall and everything else was run by civilians under Department of Energy contracts, not Department of Defense. Also, again, keeps a footprint of the Department of Defense much smaller.
Oh.
So then I find out that in 2000, well, actually let's go back a little bit further, like 1990, there's a downwinders bill that was passed. It's called RECA, Radiation Exposure Compensation Act.
Mm.
So RECA was for the downwinders. And this will give you an idea of what our exposure was compared to everybody else's. That means the government said, you know what, if you live downwind of these nuclear tests, especially these above ground tests that took place in the 50s and 60s, this could have impacted your health. We found that there's cancer clusters, like the Love Canal back in New York kind of thing, right? There's
Yeah.
cancer clusters. So there's cancer clusters in Mesquite, Nevada. There's cancer clusters in St. George, Utah. You know, there's cancer clusters in the little Arizona strip up there and in the little towns in eastern Nevada. Okay. They're 100, 50, 100, 150 miles away. I'm walking distance.
Wow.
Okay. And no exaggeration.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So the likelihood that maybe where we were was a little bit more intensive. But the other thing, like, we knew nuclear tests took place out there. I have avoided through high school and college all things called science as a class. Not my gate.
Yeah.
Right? So I didn't think anything of it. These above ground tests, which were, all terrible, took place 20, 30 years before we got there. What could be left? Little kicker. Plutonium-239 is what's in 90% of the nuclear weapons. It has a half-life of 24,110 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in other words, for the ball to get this big, to go down to half size, it's going to take almost 25,000 years. Then you put, simple math. It was 20, 30 years ago, and it's going to take 24,000 years for it to reduce to half the mass. There's no reduction. It's still as strong today, basically, as it was the day they blew up the bombs. And the way that they said that they protected Vegas, they being the Department of Energy now, the way that the Department of Energy said that they protected Vegas, because that was the local population center, 50, 60 miles away, was that the wind was going to come from the south-southeast to the north-northwest when they would do a test.
Yeah.
Well, blow everything away. Where my specific location was north-northwest, where they did the test. And then we find out, like I said, that's the above ground test. Then they've done all these below ground tests, and then they did tests away from an area. It's called NTS, Nevada Test Site, right? Mercury, the place that everybody thinks of, when you see the pictures of the mushroom clouds and stuff.
Yeah.
So we're downwind from where they're doing the tests. So all this stuff was blown away. It takes 24,000 years for it to go away. And then back to this 1975 study, it says, oh, by the way, here's what we figured out. The air, the soil, and the groundwater, it's all contaminated. So let's build a base.
And just to put it into perspective for the audience, and Bobby, you probably know more about this than me, but I read in your notes that, this area has higher levels of radiation than Chernobyl.
Yeah.
So that's like much higher. So that's
Chernobyl
crazy.
had one incident.
Right.
Just south of us, there was 100 of those incidents.
Right.
And in my specific valley, and this is, of course, the government, always honest, right? In their counting, they say there was 928 tests that took place out there. Yeah. Let's qualify how they define a test.
Yeah.
The test that they did in my valley, they said they had no nuclear yield. You can look it up. It's called roller coaster. Right? It was the roller coaster series of tests. So it was done by treaty between the US and England. That what they tested was not doing a live detonation of a nuclear bomb, but a conventional detonation, often referred to as a dirty bomb. They wanted to see if they put plutonium in a conventional warhead, a nice big bomb, how much of an area would they contaminate? Now, I'm telling you, I could walk to these locations, right? And they said, after they did these series of tests, which were not nuclear tests, that they contaminated 1,150 square miles with plutonium.
That's
Jesus.
That's incredible. And then to put people out working in these locations, let alone
Every day.
Yeah, every day. That's incredible. But that also goes to the whole military thing about treating things literally and figuratively, because they do tell you, you are our property until you're not. Which is crazy. And that's why I was truly saying about, when you go into the military base and you go to the VA and you're getting help and they see all these clusters of, okay, why is it that, because again, property, right? You're doing an assessment like, why is this happening with these particular soldiers? And you may not realize it because you don't know that they're calculating all the people who come from these particular sites that have been exposed to irradiation and all these different chemicals, that they're actually calculating this, just like you were talking about the car company. They're actually calculating this behind closed doors and looking at this, and they're still letting it go. They're still not caring. And they're like, what can we do? you know what I mean? Like, we're not shutting this base down, at the end of the day. And for them not to, give you guys everything you need, let alone, once you're made aware of it, just like when they're made aware of all these things, then they're like, okay, we're going to do something about it, just like the act with the people living downwind, let alone, I'm not sure if they're doing anything for the people they're flying in and out who, no longer work there and just working at regular jobs and they're not even VA or military assets to even claim, VA status.
Well, see, that was the last thing I was going to say was, so you had RECA, right? The Radiation Exposure Act. They took care of the downwinders.
Yeah.
It said the Department of Energy under contract took care of everything else that the military didn't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
In 2000, Bill Clinton signed an act called it's EEOICPA. They call it EOIPA, right? Energy Employees Occupational Illness Protection Act, Prevention Act, something. Anyways, it's a bill that they passed that says, hey, if you worked out in this area for the Department of Energy or a Department of Energy contractor, and you're suffering from something, and here's a whole list of illnesses that we're going to include as something, we're going to give you free lifetime medical, and we're going to give you a check for anywhere from $150,000 to $400,000 to compensate you for being out there. So it's literally this simple. In the most simplistic way, the guy that cooked my cheeseburger received up to $400,000 in lifetime medical. Me, the guy that ate the cheeseburger, can't get jack.
That is incredible. That's man.
Why? And I understand it's the secrecy, like as far as the government wants anyone to know, you were never there. But I mean, they're giving civilians who worked near the base these, medical benefits, but they won't give them to the veterans who worked there. I don't understand what
Dave was talking about
incentive is for
these were
them.
people working in the facilities that when
Right, but doing civilian jobs, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But what is their incentive to not help the vets? Because I mean, look at what's happening now. We're talking, but
we were never there. And then they would have, and this is what I've been accused of. I've had communications. There's been somebody who's been tasked with communicating with me over certain things. Okay. Sometimes making threats, sometimes going, hey, we'll make you a deal. We'll allow this, but not that. If you'll do this, whatever. And I'm like, I'm just going to tell the truth. I mean, if there's certain, I have an NDA. My NDA never expires. It goes with me to the grave. Everybody who worked out there, our NDA goes to the grave.
Yeah.
And nobody's interested in violating that. I mean, they tell you that it's 10 years in jail and it's $10,000 and all this other crap. Nobody's going to do it. Yeah. We did our job with honor, and we're not changing. We're telling the government, though, it's BS that you can just hide us in plain sight because we signed an NDA. What their fear is what happens when the world understands how toxic this place is. How is the government going to explain that people go to work in the exact same building I worked, same buildings I worked in, on the same flight line I worked at?
Yeah.
How are they going to justify that? Because I left 38 years ago. And I'm the first one to come out like this and have any success in getting a message out there, because I've been, and I credit some of that to success, is that the elephant in the room always is about the UFOs, right? That's the greatest disinformation campaign that the government has ever done, and so many people buy off on it. And I'm not going to ever say that these things don't exist.
Yeah.
But I can tell you where they're not. But I think the likelihood of those things existing somewhere, mathematically, you'd have to look at it and say it's almost impossible that they don't.
Exactly.
But
that is breaking news, people. Just for the record, what Dave just said, they are not at this location.
It's the greatest thing. I mean, for those of us that worked out there, and we all, if you really talk to somebody that worked out there, they're going to tell you the same thing. We can't tell you whether or not they exist.
Yeah.
But we know where they're not.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a big distraction.
Huge. I mean, huge. It was the thing when I went up there, because my base, people in Vegas know that there's locations out there. And so there was a new influx of people to Vegas when this new location was getting going. Everybody in Vegas says, well, where do you work? I'm at Nellis. And if they push it, I work out in the desert. You're at the place that they're building to keep Hangar 17, You're going to be the ones guarding the... Dude, if I went up to work and I saw ET, I'm 18 years old.
Yeah.
I can keep some object a secret. I don't think ET is going to be kept secret by a bunch of 18, 20 kids.
That's true.
Yeah. No.
I mean, we'd all want to see that. But it was a great distraction. It is a great distraction. And it kept people focused on something other than what was real. And the government to this day, they're pissed. All right, I'm going to tell you straight out, they're not exactly excited about what I did.
Yeah.
The government being the DOD. And Congress, and I don't blame them, I've got to work with them. I don't even blame the military leadership today so much, because they got handed this bag of goodies that now they got to figure out what to do when the decisions to do all this stuff happened 50 and 75 years ago.
Yeah.
And so now we're going through Congress. When I go talk to members of Congress, Republican, Democrat, on all these various committees and things, when I tell them the story, they're as shocked as the guy next door if I told him the story.
Sure. Definitely. It makes no sense because it's like, okay, why are we denying our military, forces and people treatment? Like what, by giving treatment, you're not acknowledging anything. You're just getting treatment.
We wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Exactly. You guys wouldn't be out here having to advocate for yourselves.
We thought that when we started this, we truly believed that I'd get that phone call that says, shut up, sit down, we'll get this handled. Exactly. Because that's the goal. Yeah. I told one time, I'm not looking for a press release for people to say, oh my God, you work there.
Yeah.
I could give two craps about that. What I'm saying is, give me my benefits that I earn, the same benefits you promised that you would give me if something happened to me when I went in. Take care of my family members that have illnesses as a result of my duty. That's it.
Yes. And the funny thing about it is, they should be trying to do this fast and quick, because most people would say, no, you did this to my family without my knowledge. I want to be compensated. And this is what I'm going to do to make sure, my family receives tens of millions of dollars or so on and so forth, right? You guys are advocating for health treatment, for medical treatment. Like, that is crazy.
Yeah. And if we, like in the intro was a list of some of the issues and stuff that I deal with. When you get your VA rating, it comes with a percentage. When your rating will determine the level of care you get from the VA, if you will.
Yeah.
Like if you're 100%, you get to go to the dentist. If you're 100%, you get to go to the eye doctor. Things like that. I'm 60%. And the only reason I'm 60% is after I left the range, I blew my knee on an exercise up range. I tore my MCL meniscus.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a desk job in what used to be joked about for us up range was the real Air Force, right? A normal Air Force member of the Air Force, treated like a normal member, known about like a normal member. Well, I started having lung problems, so I'd go to the hospital because I was getting bronchitis and pneumonia and stuff,
Mm.
which was because of my time up range, but I didn't figure, you get pneumonia, people get pneumonia. So I got compensated for that, but the other stuff, like brain atrophy, all right, means left side of my brain shrinking. They won't even acknowledge that that's why. I asked my neurologist at the VA because I can go down there and I can get tests, but I can't, there's no disability compensation, there's no percentage, there's nothing tied to it. And there's a big reason why that's important, and I'll share. But I asked my neurologist, I said, she didn't know anything about what I did. I said, do you know what caused this? She's like, no, I said, could radiation cause this? She goes, 100%, that'd be the cause.
Yeah.
So she doesn't doubt it. The issue that we have that is really more important than what they do with us is the fact that, say my atrophy turns into dementia, okay? It's not service connected. So the home health care, the benefits that would be there for my family to help assist and take care of me, since it's not service connected, won't be there. If I pass as a result of something, I end up with cancer tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I pass as a result of whatever that cancer is. There's something that's part of the VA. It's called DIC benefits, and it's a dependent care benefit that says if the military member passes as a result of their service, there's a certain amount of benefits. There's like a check that's like $1,600 a month that goes to help support the family. There's scholarships for the kids to go to college. There's different services that a spouse, a surviving spouse, family members would be eligible for. Those benefits are important. Since I can't service connect my problems, if I pass tomorrow, they get nothing. They're just shut off.
Wow.
And that's garbage.
That is wild, because just like you guys worked at this top secret facility, there should be top secret medical treatment for you. Like, what is, this should be automatically allocated in the budget for people who work in these facilities, seen and unseen. I don't understand what the issue is, especially the way the government spends money.
Yeah. And for the civilians, through the EOIPA Act, which covers more than just the area that I worked, covers people that had anything to do with developing nuclear bombs and mining uranium, things like that. They've spent like $30 billion. Our best guess is, we're not the government, we're not the CBO, right? But just based off numbers, we're figuring this is probably going to be at a $2 to $3 billion expenditure over the next period of time. Yeah. Maybe it grows into more than that. But I had some resistance about, it's coming up on about 2 years ago, right after we got this started, that I was on a conference call with some members of Congress and their staffs and some committee staffs. And they were like, first off, the government's not going to approve to spend anything more than $1 billion on anything right now. We're into saving money, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. It happened to be right after that they had approved $40 billion in support for Ukraine. And so, and I spoke up and I said, look, last week or last month, whatever it was, you agreed as Congress to give Ukraine $40 billion worth of assistance. I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm going to trust you're making the best decision that can be made on behalf of our country. I'm going to say you're doing the best job possible. But if you're going to tell me Ukraine moves to the front of the line before a group of veterans that you knowingly made sick, that are dying as a result of their time up there, there's something seriously wrong. You need to go back and look at the Constitution, because there's a few things that the Constitution says the government must provide for, and one is its military. Yeah. And that includes providing for the military once they're out because of an act that you did or because of something that happened, and I've heard a little bit of resistance. They're like, well, you signed up for the military, like you said, Bobby, you signed on to this, you're property of the US government. You're right. You go off to war, you accept a level of how do you put it? There's risk. Yeah. Right. You get in an airplane, there's a risk. You drive your car down the street, there's a risk. You didn't think the risk was going to be taking a shower and where you slept, that the water you drank was going to be contaminated, that the air you were going to breathe just simply by breathing was going to be contaminated, that the dirt you were crawling around in was going to get into you and make you sick. You know, just your pillow isn't supposed to be where you get sick.
Yeah, and you're bringing this home
Mhm.
to your family.
Yeah.
Your
And
wife
what,
is exposed to all of this.
you know, my girlfriend became my wife. We got married while I was still up there. You know, I'd come home and she'd help with my laundry because I'm 18, 19, 20 years old. I'm not doing my laundry at work.
Yeah.
I'd bring it home in the bag, right? And it would be all dirty. I'm a cop. I'm out crawling around in the dirt.
Yeah.
And she's exposed to it. And I've even learned, like, the flight attendants that were on the planes that flew us to work, they're getting cancer because we get on the plane all dirty in our dirty boots and stuff, and you're stuck in a tube with everybody.
Yeah.
They're having health issues. So our ask has been all along. And now we've had, you, like you said about like compensation. There's a lot of guys that want compensation, and I'm not going to argue we don't deserve it.
Oh,
And
definitely.
I've had members of Congress now say, you guys deserve that. We gave that to the Department of Energy. We gave it to your cook at the chow hall.
Mhm.
You should be able to get it too. But the first thing we have to do, and we're getting very, very close, is NTTR is a contaminated area. They need to admit it's a contaminated area. And they need to, when the process is this, when I go to the VA and I say, you know, I have this issue, and I think it's because of that exposure, the VA then calls for anyone. They call the DOD and say, hey, you know, Bobby Washington was stationed at ABC base and he says that he was exposed to this. Can you confirm duty, location, and exposure?
Yeah.
DOD goes, yep, Bobby was there. Yep, that stuff's there. Exposure's confirmed. That's the first step for us. Is there, we were exposed. Our issues are presumptive. Very important language for us because it says, yes, we're going to say A cause B.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to do studies about this because the Department of Energy already came out in their bill that took care of their
They
employees.
already know.
What it does.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we don't
But
even
if they had, but if they confirm for one person, they then have to confirm for everybody, right? It's not just your group, it's everyone who came after you, it's everyone who's working there now. I mean, they're going to be liable for the rest of as long as the bases are open out there, right? But it's a two-way street. It's what you guys signed up for. You know, I guess you knew some of the risks. Like you said, you weren't expecting to be poisoned in your own homes and take it to your families, but they signed up to take care of you. You're our veterans. And I don't think there's anyone out there who would disagree with that. When I heard your story, I was outraged. I mean, and I didn't know what was going on until I heard your story. And so I think that's why it's so important that you're out there and you're advocating and you're speaking to people like us and you're doing these interviews, because I don't think there's anyone who could hear this story and not agree that we need to take care of our vets. We need to take care of you guys. And it's the government's duty. It's what they agree to.
That's my opinion. And that's ours. You know, they tell you before you sign the paper that if, hey, on the back end, if there's an issue, we got you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Unless they don't.
I think a lot of it has to do with they don't want the particular bases that they do these test studies at, that they've used nuclear weapons, that they've used high yield weapons, to be shut down by Congress, because that is the ultimate thing. When they say, yes, this is going on, yes, there is no fix in sight, well, Congress is going to say, well, we keep paying people and knowingly who's going to work at this base, knowing what is going to happen to you. So in order to alleviate that issue, this has to be shut down. I mean, you know, we could talk about how Clinton shut down, you know, a bunch of bases and, you know, whether or not that should or should not have happened, but they would definitely shut these bases down, at least attempt to.
I've been accused by the DOD of that being my goal, is to shut those bases down. And again, I respond with, that's not my fight.
Yeah.
You guys are going to have to deal with that issue. That's not my issue. My issue is take care of those who sent there. And I don't know how that they keep that stuff open. I don't know how that they can remediate. I've read reports where it says that there's so much toxicity out there, it can never be remediated.
Yeah.
you know, that like one of the jokes, and I think I don't know if it was in the movie, the short documentary that we did, or some of the other stuff, but we show a picture of a barbed wire fence. Again, military here. They said, don't cross the fence because on the other side of the fence, it's radioactive. And the barbed wire somehow stops that from spreading.
Mm-hmm.
It don't make any sense.
Yeah. So how were you received at Congress?
It's changed a lot. In the beginning, it was, who the heck are you and what do you want? Why are you wasting my time?
Yeah.
And I get it, you know, I guess you got to go through a vetting process or something, but it was very difficult to get anybody to meet with you, to meet with me. It was, it's a story that's very hard to believe. The people don't want to believe it.
Yeah.
But then they start to understand. Then we start, you know, media, things like this, or a TV or a news article or things like that, a little bit of that. And they're like, there's more than one person saying this. And wait a second, here's these guys that are all coming out, and, you know, men and women that have these various health issues and fertility problems and downstream genetic problems. They start buying off. And then in June of 23, I put together a memorial list because we started finding out our buddies had died.
Wow.
And so we keep adding to this list, both people that just died or people that we found out maybe they died 10 years ago. And then I started trying to track how old everybody was when they died and what did they die from. And most of the deaths are cancer. And the day before yesterday, we hit 500.
Wow.
Oh my
Sorry to hear
God.
that. Man, that's sad.
Average age is 65.
Wow.
It's not normal.
So what law is being, you know, you guys are trying to have, you know, made to help with your situation and all the soldiers that are coming, you know, after you because they're still working at these bases and locations?
So we've actually had some really great advocates in Congress. And full disclosure on me, one of the reasons why I took this on wasn't just because I've had issues. When I got out of the service in 89 and a couple of years later, 92, I started getting involved in politics. I started getting involved in Republican politics, doing partisan type stuff, trying to help candidates get elected. And I got involved in some things and got some bills passed in state legislature down in Arizona. And I learned how this process works. I learned how politics works, the good, the bad, the ugly. I learned how, you know, beyond more than just the little cartoon when we were kids about how does a bill become a bill.
Yeah.
So I knew how the process worked. And I started using that knowledge to be able to do something about this. And so the first thing that I did was a very good friend of mine is a very well-known attorney here in Vegas and in Nevada. And I went to her and I said, you know, I'm a Republican. Nevada is mostly blue. The rest of all but one member of Congress is a Democrat. Both our senators are Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the one Republican. I'm like, hey, can you hook me up with Congressman Amade so I can have a conversation? I need to get a bill, right? Yeah. I need to get a bill drafted in Congress. No easy thing to get. Takes usually years to get somebody to agree to do it. My first conversation with Amade in 45 minutes, he says, what do you need? I said, I need a BDR, bill draft request. I need to get a bill drawn up by legislative council so that we can do something about this. He says, you got it. That takes years. And I got it in 45 minutes.
Wow.
So that was our first huge win. And then as it started going through, it took forever to get the bill actually drafted. We went from April of 83 to April of 23 to September of 24 before we actually got a bill introduced. And so a year ago almost, we got our first bill introduced. The Congress expired. We roll into the new Congress. The first bill was 9511, HR 9511. Then in this Congress, we got HR 1400. It's the same bill, but had to be reintroduced into the new Congress. So that was fantastic. And I started meeting with everybody in the House. And then I had a meeting with Senator Rosen's office. Senator Rosen is one of the senators from Nevada, and found out she was already tracking the bill that we had in the House. She was already very interested in it. And now it was kind of like somebody had helped provide a platform for this to become a discussion. That's what the invisible enemy has done, is we've created this discussion. And she has come out and said, this is my #1 legislative priority for this Congress. And she serves on Senate Armed Services Committee. So she's on the Committee of Jurisdiction, which is and I have learned is entirely different than just your average senator. If the average senator goes to the DOD and asks a question, or if a congressman goes and asks the DOD for a question, they're like, yeah, okay, we'll get on it. If somebody from the Committee of Jurisdiction asks a question, it's kind of like getting called to the principal's office. So it gets a different level of
urgency to it.
Yeah. And so then she went when after Trump was inaugurated and his people start going before the Senate hearings. Well, when the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff goes up for his hearing, she asked him in public hearing, will you help me fix this problem? What's he going to say?
Yeah.
Now he's stuck. Then the Secretary of the Air Force comes up for a hearing. She goes, will you help me with this problem? He's stuck too. The Air Force Chief of Staff, same thing. So now you have these people in public saying, we're going to help, knowing I don't want to help.
Yeah.
You know, and the most important people in this is the Secretary of the Air Force and the Air Force Chief of Staff. So now they're in a position where they've publicly committed to doing something. I do know from kind of inside baseball that most of the generals and stuff really do support us. They may not like it, but they get it. They're sympathetic, empathy towards what we're going through. So Senator Rosen then introduced, we had HR 1400 in the House. Now we have S 2220 in the Senate. And then we've taken on another thing, and that there's something called the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. That's the one bill every year Congress is going to pass, because that authorizes the existence of our military. Okay, that's the law that makes the military for that next fiscal year. So in the 2026 NDAA, there's in that bill, there was language inserted by Senator Rosen, and it's amazing language. It's actually more than what we were asking for, because, you know, we're trying to control the size of the ask.
Yeah.
We could, ask for the whole cake up front. They're going to tell you, no, let's go at it a bite at a time. That's the way typically bills successfully pass, is you just take a bunch of little bites and eventually you get where you want to go. So she came out and said that in the NDAA, they're going to require the Secretary of the Air Force to admit to everybody that has served on the NTTR since 1951, that the NTTR be deemed a area of contamination, basically a Superfund site.
Yeah.
And that they're going to have to take all these steps. In the amendment, you can't make them spend money. But in the amendment to the NDAA, what you can do is direct them to do things. And that is to deem it contaminated, to admit that people were there. And that gets us well on our way, so that the other bills that we have going on are going to make it so that everybody that was up there can go to the VA. They can get their ratings.
Yeah.
They can get taken care of, and we can service connect the problems. And then we can, going back to 1951, then we can go back and help these widows and widowers who have lost their spouses from being up there, to go back and service connect their spouse's issue, so that they can finally receive the benefits that some of these people have been denied 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the benefit that was promised but denied, because more of a DOD embarrassment than a DOD secret.
Yes.
Because we're not telling our secrets.
So I find it interesting. What is your classification of where you worked? You know, and for the length of time, that just doesn't even make any
It's
sense.
like we were on vacation.
Yeah. That-
So our records, the technical term, if you will, is called data masked. So on a leave and earning statement, if you've ever been in the military or ever seen one, or even like on a paycheck stub,
yeah.
on that thing, it says, hey, this is where you work, right?
Hmm.
You know, if I was part of like when I went down to Main Base Nellis, I became part of the 57th Fighter Weapons Wing Fighter Weapons School. That's where I worked. It identified exactly where I worked. Mine on my location, I can't remember the whole thing, but it's like NJYTFS, whatever, alphabet soup. That is a code for something that means nothing
Yeah.
to anybody to ever read it. And the codes are classified. So we're data masked. In other words, I spent 4 years in Vegas gambling on the strip or something.
That's
Doesn't
incredible.
say where we were, doesn't say where we worked, doesn't say what unit we were in, doesn't say anything.
Yeah, because that goes into special forces, that goes into the SEAL teams, that goes
100%,
into
same
all
exact
kind
thing.
of different ramifications and places and locations that we have assets that you know are trying to do their job. And again, we thank you and everyone who's put their lives on the line for
Mhm.
us, and to not get the basic medical care for the things that you were asked to do is unbelievable and unimaginable. And
Mhm.
wow. Can
And
you
then,
tell us about the Invisible Enemy, the organization that you established?
so when I started doing all this research, I started to look at this going, my opinion, I think this is a big deal. Right? My wife and I talk about it. I think this is a big deal. I started telling a couple of my buddies a little bit about the research I was doing. And I'm like, I think this is a big deal. So the process that took place was this. In the fall of 2021, our chief died, right? Where the first reunion was held.
Yeah.
He died. He had had cancer a couple of times and ended up with a brain tumor, and he died from this brain tumor. There's a brain tumor that's pretty common for us. It's called glioblastoma. And if you get one of those, you're like 3 to 6 months.
Wow.
Oh
And
my God.
so he got the brain tumor. He died. His daughter then held his memorial in the spring of 2022. We go to that, and there's about 25 of us that flew in around from around the country who lived out in South Carolina. So we all fly in, and while I'm there, I said, a couple of you guys know a little bit. I've been doing some research about why we all have these various issues. Why did the chief have cancer and I said, here's what I can tell you. All the answers suck. I'm not ready to give you everything because I want to make sure I'm 100%. We all fear the conspiracy stuff because soon as it comes up, oh, you're at Area 51 or you were this place, you were that place,
Mhm.
it's conspiracy stuff. We can't have that. We got to be 100%. I said, so as soon as I get this down, then this is what we're going to do. And I'll let you all know. Then in the fall of 2022, we have another reunion. It's at my house again in Vegas. And I have about 40 people in town for it this time. And while we're there, I say, guys, I'm starting to put together a PowerPoint presentation. Um, when it's done, I'll let everybody know. And listen to it. Believe me, don't believe me. Y'all owe it to yourselves at least to listen to what I have to say. I've been working on this now for years and years. Right after that, I got sick with bronchitis. I get bronchitis twice a year. It'll last anywhere from a couple of weeks to severe cases a couple of months.
Yeah.
So I got sick the week after Veterans Day, so mid-November, and I'm sick until mid-January. And it was probably the worst case of bronchitis I'd ever had. And so I don't do anything. I get better. I put together a PowerPoint, and then February of 23, I told the cops that were uprange, we have a private Facebook page, and I just posted on there, guys, I've been telling you, I've been working on this. I'm ready. Here's going to be a Zoom link on this date. I put it like 2 weeks out. I'm going to do a presentation. Plan on an hour and a half because it's like a 60 slide PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So I do it. Everybody's floored. I said, well, I'm going to do this again. Tell the other guys, maybe if you guys believe in what I'm saying, Tell the other guys, let's do another one and let's try to get some more guys on here. So we do it again. It's another 25, 30 people. Well, then we decide to take it out to other people on other pages of folks that we know that worked out where we worked on the NTTR. So we do that and the numbers start to grow. And I'm like, what do you guys think? And everybody's like, this is insane. The story's insane. We believe you because we're sitting here experiencing the same things. And now we know all of our buddies are experiencing the same things.
Yeah.
So at that point, I told my wife, I said, this is really becoming a big deal. We need to put something together. And so that's what we did. We put together the invisible enemy. I got some of my buddies on a board. We filed with the IRS. I had a friend of mine who's a retired CPA put together all the paperwork. We did it the right way. We went into the IRS. We said, we're going to put together an advocacy group, 501c3, advocate for veterans and veterans benefits. We got approved. We had our paperwork back from the IRS in 35 days, which was shocking. And we did a press release. The invisible enemy is here. We exist. We spent a couple $1,000s on the press release. I have a public relations, marketing, branding firm here in Vegas that works for us pro bono. They've
Nice.
more work than anybody could possibly imagine. And they have a wordsmith on there, and they wrote this very well worded press release about the invisible enemy. That first press release got 54 million clicks.
Amazing.
Wow.
It's mind blowing, right? And we paid a service to send it out. It's called Cision. So they sent it everywhere, thousands of press outlets. The next morning I get up, my phone's blowing up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's on Google and Yahoo and AOL and everywhere you can imagine. And every military publication now has picked it up. It's on newspapers all over the place. And people would click into that because they were literally just running the press release. We wrote the story for them. And so they're clicking on this, well over 50 million clicks, 54 million clicks. So then we start getting the phone calls, and that's when then we took it to Congress. We're like, look, and it's been this ride ever since. And it's like, it grows exponentially where, in the beginning, it was like, there was this huge surge and then it was kind of quiet. It's like, okay, we all got it, but we kept pushing it and getting more and more people to pick it up. And now the invisible enemy is in about every state. We have members in about every state. We're almost in every congressional district now that we have somebody who served up there. I mean, Alaska and Maine and, everywhere in the middle. And we started, we have a private page, and then we started a public page to start to educate. And we're getting more and more people on that. And now we do a newsletter, and I'm traveling all the time. I'm going to a VA conference next week in Tampa. Then in a couple of weeks, I'm probably going back to DC. And I go, if somebody wants me to come, I've gone to Columbus, Ohio to a church, or not Columbus, Ohio, which is the one that's up, maybe it's Columbus, I don't know, up on the Great Lakes in Ohio.
Okay.
Anyways, there was some huge church there that wanted to show our short documentary and have me speak about it. So I'm on an airplane, I'm flying out there because I never know who the next person is I'm going to get to talk to and what they can do to help us share our message, and that's what we've done is we've gone into Congress. We meet with everybody that we can. We tell everybody that we can. We ask everybody to share our message. Some guy, Bobby Washington says, hey, would you be on our podcast?
Yeah.
And I'm in, and I appreciated you when you asked, and scheduling with me and getting all that done. And I'll do anything to tell people our story because the story is truly horrible.
Yeah. Tell them about the documentary.
So we did, I'm clearly not the millennial, but I have an addiction called I can sit on Facebook and go to Reels and keep watching all these videos forever and ever. And my daughter, who's 25, she does hair. She's a rock star. Has built her business around her social media.
Yeah.
And she's like, Dad, you got to do videos. You got to do videos. I'm not that guy. I got the face for radio, right? So she kept pushing me on this stuff. And then I said, I watch all these stupid shorts. I'll watch, about anything. We should do a short. And my board of directors is all my age. And when I told them, they're like, you're stupid. No, we're going to go raise some money and pay for this. What's it going to cost? And I said, somewhere between $16,000 and $20,000 is about the best deal that I found for a professionally Hollywood produced, so on their part, it was the information, rent the cameras and travel and all that kind of stuff. So we created this short documentary, and then I've traveled all over with that, going to film festivals. And then we won the Santa Fe Film Festival, and we just last week that I couldn't go to, we were in the final, we were nominated for an award there. And so we've received special recognition and things like that from others. A lot of these film festivals are in Hollywood, and I'm not picking on anybody and I'm not saying anything, but it's typically a more liberal crowd than a bunch of guys, right? So it's been really weird because there aren't military type documentaries at these. They're much more, sometimes it might be a dark subject matter like ours, but it's not quite so heavy, staunchy kind of whatever.
Yeah.
And it's been super well received. And I sit there and I'm not there to be a Republican or a Democrat or conservative or liberal. I'm there to share our story.
Exactly.
And this story affects everybody the same way. When the first time I testified at a House Veterans Affairs Roundtable, half the members of Congress that were in front of me were crying.
Yeah.
When they heard the story. Some of the members of Congress have had their staffs watch the documentary so that they get it. And I can talk to somebody for hours and hours about our story. They can watch an 11-minute documentary and be knocked off their feet and get it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable story. I mean, literally, we don't believe it because why would this happen? It doesn't make any sense.
And you don't want it to be true.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that to be true.
Yeah.
But want it or not, here we sit.
Yep.
So the movie's been a huge asset, and now we're making a full-length 90-minute documentary that we're about 3/4 of the filming, where we've interviewed more people. We've literally got in the car, and it took 2 days. We drove around the entire NTTR so that we could show like what these areas are like. We didn't go inside the fence line. We stayed legal.
So let me ask you real quick, how did that feel with the white vehicles watching you the whole time as you're driving around this location? I always hear about the white vehicles that are watching people as which all about that.
And the barbed wire fence, protecting you from the radiation side.
Exactly.
You know what that was? There was one moment where I saw something, and it was really hard.
Yeah. It's
still really hard because there was that moment in time where you knew exactly where you were. You knew what you were there for, and you know what's happened. And it was really, really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine, because as you're even out there and the people that, if you're able to see them, if they made themselves visible, you're like, you are where I was and you might be where I am now.
Yeah.
Telling your story.
My wife was with me, so she got to see something. Sorry.
No. That's what it's about.
It was really tough.
Yeah. So how is your health now?
I'm fine. It's kind of a relative statement.
Yeah.
That I have, obviously we talked about, I have left brain atrophy. I have a brain cyst that puts pressure in the back of my brain. I have vestibular issues, which is a really big word for saying I lose my balance and I've fallen. I fell once trying to step over my dog, and I now have a plate, some pins and screws on my foot because I busted it up. I was on a scooter for 7 months. Yeah. My lung function is 67%, normal lung function. I have something called Parkinson'sism, a condition that's Parkinson's related. I don't have Parkinson's. I don't have the brain lesions and stuff.
Yeah.
But I get the shakes. So sometimes carrying a cup of coffee is pretty entertaining. But we work through that because I'm not missing my coffee.
Yeah.
Um, there's all kinds of stuff. You
Yeah.
know, I've got tumors. Like, I don't, it's hard to see on camera, but there's a little lump right here. There's another one up here. They're
Yeah.
all, I've got them in my arms, my legs, my body, you know, my torso.
So has your medical treatment status changed as far as that 60%? No, it has not.
No, it was 10% for a long time when my lungs deteriorated more after COVID. Uh, I went to 60%, but it's really about getting all this stuff service connected because, I mean, if the average age of the guys dying is 65, we had somebody that died at 81,
Yeah.
world commanders, which is great. And I know people that are still alive in their 70s. And last week I found out about somebody who died that was 45.
Mhm.
So, you know, my OJT supervisor when I was uprange died at 33 from a massive heart attack, who was extremely healthy guy. They can't figure out why.
Yeah.
And it's not an unusual thing to have happen for us. You know, the brain tumor is not an unusual thing. Not everybody gets one, but you know, you hear these things more frequently than I hear from anybody else I've ever talked to.
Yeah.
Far more common. Um, So, you know, we just deal with it. I look at it this way. You know, I don't dwell on it too much. Number one, I can't control what happens.
Yep.
And number two, a lot of my buddies, a lot of the guys I know are far worse off than I am.
Mm. Man,
You know, you've
we
seen the
can hear
movie, you
it.
saw the one guy with a feeding tube. He was a DOD contractor up there. He hasn't been able to eat food in 4 years.
Wow.
Doesn't have a tongue. He doesn't have teeth.
Yeah.
He has he has a tube that goes right into his stomach and he pours like, injects, what do you call this stuff? You know, like my mom used to have to drink it like those old age milkshake things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Look like protein shakes and
Yeah. So
things.
that's what he lives on, you
Wow.
know, and he's the most cheerful, optimistic guy you'd ever meet because he's like, hey man, I'm up.
Yeah.
And if people watch the movie, you'll see him and it'll break your heart.
Yeah.
And you know, his name's Robert. I call him up and I check on him and it's hard to talk to him. He's hard to understand. Because he has no teeth, he has no tongue. It was all removed. He's had cancer now 6 times. He just had some skin cancers removed. He's had bone cancer, throat cancer, cancer in his mouth, all kinds of stuff. And, you know, if he's damn glad to be here, it's kind of tough to bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
you're definitely being the voice that's needed for him and others like him that aren't even here any longer and the ones to come. So, I mean, if I don't know if you soldiers out there will hear this that actually work on these particular installations, but hey, be the voice of reason because, you know, at some point this can be you. And it probably will be, and you need to go get checked because, you know, and that's another thing the government doesn't truly want to happen because, you know, if these soldiers that and military personnel that work on these bases start actually asking their doctors questions, somebody's going to have some answers for them.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing about this advocacy that's happened is some of the guys that didn't know they had health problems, they thought they were fine.
Yeah.
First off, veterans aren't really good at asking for help. Secondly, most of the people that served out there are men. Men aren't smart enough to ask for help.
Exactly.
You know, we like to hold out, we're better, stronger, smarter. And so it's made some of the guys go to the doctors and some of them found out that they've had some pretty significant issues that they've been able to start treating before they got really bad. And so some it's actually guys have been able to get some things, you know, fixed. A buddy of mine over in Hawaii, he was a cop up range, went up after I did. Then he went to Hawaii, became a retired cop from Hawaii. He's got great benefits, so he's able to go to his civilian doctor.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you know, my buddy told me about this stuff. I want to really get checked out. And I found out he had a couple of serious conditions. One of them, had they not found it, it would have killed him.
Wow.
You know, so it's you know, it's done some good. It's already done good.
Okay. Well, to close out this interview, Dave, what do you have anything else that you want the public to know besides, how our listeners of Strange Darkness Radio can support your the invisible enemy, and just spreading the awareness of this situation, and bring it, shed more light on it to the public.
So the first thing always, we have a website, www.theinvisiblenemy.org. Make sure you spell it out right. So people forget there's an E at the end of invisible and an E at the beginning of enemy, and sometimes it doesn't work. Well, put in 2 E's right there, you'll get it. But theinvisiblenemy.org, there's a little button that says donate, because traveling to Congress is not cheap. That's one of the most expensive cities you can spend a weekend at a time.
Yeah.
So we need that. I mean, I joke a little bit, but we genuinely do need that. We also need people the week after Labor Day. The Senate is going to be voting, the full Senate will be voting on the NDAA, which has the language that's going to say that place out there is contaminated, and it directs the Secretary of the Air Force to identify all those that were there. Call your senator from your state. Don't call the other state ones, because they don't care about you. They don't want to talk to you. Call your state senators and say, support that. There's 2 sections in there in the NDAA that somebody could look up, and it's specifically about us. And it's 1165 and 1166. This is a huge, huge document, but sections 1165 and 1166 are what's important. They need to tell their senators to support that language. We have to make sure that's in there. And next big step is that we have a Facebook page. It's the Invisible Enemy Advocates. And it's got we have a little green hazy logo. It's like a skull with like a green haze coming out of it, kind of thing. It's pretty dark, kind of funny.
Yeah.
One of the guys designed it. So when they see that, they're at the right spot. The movie, if they go to our website, that's on there. Some of the interviews, some of my testimony is on there. We try to link up, if I get the link for your podcast, it's going to go up there. And we push all that stuff out so people can listen. And it's amazing because they listen to these things and people do get educated on it, and they do get supportive. But right now it's about raising money and getting our stuff, this first step through the Senate, and then we'll get it through the House. But senators need to hear from everybody.
Definitely. Carolyn, any last questions for Dave?
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for your service, and thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you so much for advocating and doing the work that you're doing, because I think it's really important. And we're going to do our best to help you guys. We'll make, a post, and we'll remind our audience to call their senators week before Labor Day. We can even put a link to your Invisible Enemy website so they can donate, and just try to keep spreading the awareness and educating as much as we can. But thank you so much, all of you.
Yeah, it was my honor to be on here. I appreciate it. It's because of folks like you that we've been able to have the success we're having.
No, your story is amazing and unbelievable that this is even going on, or you have to put all this energy into getting something that is well deserved. And again, I thank you for your service. I think you're a hell of a guy to go down these roads and to just do what you're doing for people who are no longer here with us, but they were, there with you in spirit. And, the military has that motto, no man left behind. So let's make sure that no one is left behind in any situation, be it here or abroad. So yeah, thank you, Dave, very much.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Bobby.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Great one.
All right, you guys, thanks again for listening to Strange Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Bobby Washington, along with Carolyn Grey, and we will talk soon.